Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Bati. Good morning, Good morning, Rufai. Yeah, I mean, we're sticking with the state governor matter and the 62,000. I guess looking further into the states, as Ayo already talked about, it's very important that we do go through, I guess, the metrics of each of the states with respect to how well they can manage this minimum wage. So we've seen today's headline, of course, for this day newspaper, talking about what Mr. Bagado has said as far as the realities are concerned. And I believe over the weekend, this is something that's been talked about, continuously. There was a guest on the morning show who said that the 62,000 is an insult and it's a slap in the face to workers everywhere. I think I have to play this clip of what he said over the weekend.
The government is now offering 62,000 naira. I think that's a joke. That's a collective insult to the majority of workers in the public sector and the private sector.
Yeah, so, is it really an insult, right? And I think the two real-world examples that we can use are Edo State with Governor Obaseki and Governor Basi Otu of Cross River States with the minimum wage announcements that they made this year. So, this day broke the story for, we started with Obaseki, right? The 70,000. If you look, that news broke, and then I think if you look at the headline from the Punch, right? The Punch said, Obaseki increases minimum wage, and the workers hail the governor. So he was hailed for 70,000. Meanwhile, the Labour is saying that 62 is not acceptable, and they're going for 100. If you look at what Obaseki said specifically when he made the announcement, you take a look at a quote from the governor, right? He said at the time that this is what Edo State can afford. So he says the 70,000 minimum wage is within what we can afford as a state government. However, should the federal government decide on a benchmark higher minimum wage and make the funds available to the states from savings which have been made from fuel subsidy, the Edo State government will adjust its minimum wage to that of the federal government, right? Then we go to the governor of Cross River State. Also, on I think it was May Day, he announced 40,000. You need to remember this. It was 40,000 that Cross River State announced, right? And let's go to what Governor Otu said when he made his announcement for that 40,000 minimum wage. Very, very instructive. He said, owing to the peculiarity of Cross River State regarding its lean finances, occasioned by low statutory federal allocation, that's FAC, and aggravated by the unfavorable state GDP to debt servicing, the new minimum wage implementation is in line with the realities of time rather than sentiments. So I said, okay, let's compare Edo State and Cross River. If you look at the internally generated revenue for Edo State was in 8th place. 8th. At 47.5 billion. Cross River State was in 18th place. So Cross River State's IGR is half of Edo State's IGR. If you look at debts, and this is something that really needs to be discussed as far as the states are concerned, domestic debt for the Debt Management Office, Edo State is at 123 billion. Cross River is at 220 billion. So Cross River has half the revenues of Edo State, but higher debt. If you bring in foreign debt, Edo State is at 314 billion. Cross River is at 211. If you convert at current exchange rates and add to the domestic debt, Edo State comes out ahead. But then look at also headline inflation for April. Your bench for the country, nation is 33.6. Headline inflation in Edo State is 32.7. Cross River is 33.7. So Cross River is even higher than the national average. Food inflation, both of them are higher than the nation. Look at Edo at 44.5, 42.6. The debt conversation, the state governments, in total, it was 5.6 trillion in 2022. It's jumped to 5.8 trillion for the states. Look at your largest domestic debt. Lagos, which has 651 billion in IGR, has 1 trillion naira in debt. Delta State is in second place at 373 billion. Ogun State is in third at 278. River State is, look at Cross River State. Cross River has the fifth highest domestic debt in Nigeria. You cross over to foreign debt, and it's a similar story. Lagos State at $1.2 billion. Kaduna State in second place at 587. Look at Edo State and Cross River State that we're both talking about. So if, the debt discussion has to be factored into the ability of these states to be able to pay whatever minimum wage is being discussed. So the conversation has to be at the state level, and debt has to be factored in. And so, if you go back to Obaseki's quotes, to revisit it one more time, I have to ask a fiscal question for all of you YouTube viewers, everybody out there. So he says, just one more time, if the federal government decides on a higher minimum wage and makes the funds available to states from the savings which have been made from fuel subsidy, you will adjust. The fiscal question to you is this: if you are the head of a company, or you are the head of a state or a municipality, if you get a windfall, do you pay down debts or do you pay a higher minimum wage? What do you do? So that's the contribution. And by the way, if Edo State, which is in 8th place at 42 billion, is only able to pay 70,000 naira minimum wage, what happens to Taraba with 10 billion in IGR? What happens to Yobe State with 9 billion? There are some banks in this country where their line items for fees and income is higher than the IGR of some of these states. So it's good that this conversation is being had now, because now the focus should be on the state governors. But in terms of the fiscal structure of the states, debt has and all these other factors have to be put in.
Question you asked.
Yeah, would you pay down debt or would you
I wouldn't
higher
pay down debt because I can reprice my debt. I can look at my debt again, I can rejig it, and it's a going concern. But talent...
What about interest rates? They're going up.
They're going up. But even with the interest rate going up, I can still rejig my debt with the debt rejigging tools. I can reprice my debt. But talent, and I don't have that luxury of talent. And so my best priority is to keep the talent, because it is the talent that will give me the productivity in the long run to be able to sort out my debts.
Are these people, are they civils, are they talent, are they
No,
productive?
so,
You know what I'm saying?
very good question.
Yeah.
While we're speaking about all of this, somebody sent me a message. He said, Rufai, you're not factoring the fact that majority of these workers in the civil service are ghost workers. Let's not even talk about efficiency now.
Yeah.
Ghost workers. But how do the ghost workers come into the civil service? Some of them are by their connections with people in government. We can't deny that fact. So it is also a time for these states to be able to prune and also look at an efficiency bond and an output bond with even the civil service. I've always had problems with inefficiencies in our civil service to a large extent. The question is, our civil service is not 21st century up to date. And because in the long run, we need to understand the fact that some of the jobs will be taken away from the civil service by AI. So are we grooming them for the future? Productivity is an all-time low. I mean, this is the same company that you employ people, that they are using your office computer to watch Stella Dudumo's blog or Linda Keji blog in the morning.
Right.
I see that every time. I'm using company internet. Or you're using company internet to protest Canadian Vixer.
Stella Dimoko Caucus.
Okay,
Dimoko Caucus.
Dimoko Caucus.
Stella Dimoko.
Stella, I know.
That's the correct name.
SDK, Stella Dimoko Caucus. Or the other one you read, what's that one you read? Gislova. It's only...
I don't know, it's not just
But Dr. Abati is productive. His output is, so this is the...
Instablog.
Yes, I get you.
So rather
I know these names too.
So rather than they pop up on my Instagram timeline. So rather than being productive,
They're highly productive.
so we should really, going forward, after all of this with labor, we should now have a conversation about productivity.
Right. I agree.
Because that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But also, why we will not exonerate the states is that even when you give them money to pay, they don't still pay. President Buhari gave them bailout funds, and we saw people paying quarter salaries. Some of those people paying quarter salaries now, they are going to answer to EFCC today. Let's call it spade a spade. You can't be talking this, and we are concerned about finishing the vice president. Oh, where did Oshiba stay? Where did the other vice president say? We have spent 21 billion on that now.
Point well, I agree.
Have they brought media in to even come and see the quality of the home they built?
All right, very quickly, Rotus, I think in terms of, and I think I'd spoken quite extensively in the first, during the newspaper review, maybe the question, I'll pose the question back to you. If a state is not viable, if states like you mentioned that are turning over in terms of IGR 10 billion naira, should they exist as a state? Because a number of these states, as big as some countries, there are some countries that do not have the people, nor the resources that these states have, and are able to run efficiently. So we have a managerial, let me use that word in terms of organizational speak, challenge. We have governors who are there who are doing nothing. Let's not lie to ourselves. They just go to Abuja. FAC is the only thing. So if you ask them to give an account of their stewardship in 4-8 years, nothing to show. Let me use Edo State as an example. Why is Edo State, why has, you look at the numbers and you look at their IGR on the rise compared to like a state like Cross River. The Alagodaro Summit. Yes, very intentional by this administration, the outgoing administration, on improving the prosperity of Edo State. So they are looking for ways to attract investment, and that has really, if you look at the, and they're able to boast about their investments in education, their investments in human resources, infrastructure. There's a plan there. What we had in Cross River State were promises. What's Kali something?
Kalaschiki.
What happened to all those things? So we just have people, governors who are making, so the angst is not because they have all these debts and they cannot pay or we feel sorry for them. It's because they have so much and are doing little. And then guess who has to pay for it? The people who have to suffer.
Edo State has oil palm, and Edo State has been able to attract companies like Presco, Okomo. These are publicly traded companies on the NGX operating in Edo State. So
being intentional, they have a plan.
Speaking of EFCC, how far with the case of Yahya Bello now, sir?
I think that the basic thing is to restate the principles. One, a laborer deserves his wages. Two, the right to protest by organized labor is a constitutional right. It's not a privilege.
Of course.
Our courts have ruled in that regard. Nigeria is a signatory to international conventions that makes the point that, workers must be paid, decent living wages. I think Section 16 of the 1999 Constitution again reiterates that. Now, number two is that we're dealing with a number of issues here. The capacity to pay. Beyond the capacity to pay, sustainability. Now, these states that claim 60,000 is even too much for them, many of them cannot even pay the 30,000.
Thank you, doctor.
However, in my view, the debt burden of these states cannot be used as an excuse to justify their lack of capacity to pay. Because when you look at this debt burden, these borrowings, this heavy, indebtedness, if you investigate it, you will find a lot of corruption. That's why I talked about leakages, wastages, cutting fat, reducing conspicuous consumption. And that perhaps if, government expenditure were to be streamlined at subnational level, maybe we'll be making progress. After all, these same state governments, they not only steal from workers, they steal even from local government. That's why there is this big issue about local government autonomy. But at the end of the day, we need to think of the leadership recruitment process.
That's right.
How come in Nigeria is Division 3 people that we always saddle with big responsibility? Because you see, if you don't have the brain, you can't understand it. And you can't deliver. So we have a leadership capacity problem. So when we come to the table and we are doing all this analysis, textbook analysis, the people that you are analyzing, do they even understand it? Do they even have the mental capacity? People are more interested in toys. They want to ride SUV. They want to acquire chieftaincy titles, but they don't have the mental ability. Other countries run on the engine of their most brilliant people. In politics, in civil service, the best and the brightest are the ones that go there. Why is it that, one of these days, some of these touts, motor park chairmen, will be here. They will become senators. They will become governors.
It's already happened.
And we will sit down here and we will say, they are not paying, there is a wastage. How much level of intelligence do you expect from people whose entire lifetime is conspicuous consumption? Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much, Rotus. Doctor, you just, hit the nail on the head. Leadership challenge. Thank you very much, Rotus, for bringing up this conversation. And see you at 11 for Global Business Report.